The greatest Jedi mind trick ever. She doesn't care about victims. How did they manage to convince so many people that a survivor of domestic violence, sexual assault, and sexual harassment who represented victims for 40 years did not care about victims? That was the greatest Jedi mind trick ever accomplished in Alameda County. Let's talk about my story. 1977, standing in the gap for victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment at Yale University as the lead plaintiff in Alexander versus Yale. 1979, co founder of the Bay Area Defense Committee for Battered Women, advocating for victims of domestic violence being prosecuted in Alameda County. 1992, making new laws for establishing new law under Title IX for victims of sexual assault in Berkeley. 2002, standing in the gap for victims of racial harassment and employment discrimination, making new law, going to the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. 2003, representing dozens of female correctional officers for decades, fighting for their right to go to work without being sexually assaulted or sexually harassed at work. That's the history. Fast forward to becoming the Alameda County District Attorney. This is what I found when I walked into the Victim Witness Advocates Division as the new DA. We quickly cleaned up this mess and reorganized the office and hired more advocates to be able to process more claims. We increased the workforce by 35%. We diversified the workforce, hiring Indigenous advocates, advocates who spoke Cantonese and Mandarin, more African American advocates, because most of the victims in Alameda County served by the DA's office are African Americans. We hired our first transgender advocate. We reduced the backlog of victim compensation applications and vendor payments that was more than a year down to less than 2 months in under a year's time. We emphasized mental health support by hiring a mental health coordinator so that people didn't just get a piece of paper with a whole bunch of referrals, but they actually got somebody who made sure that they got to the right therapist, that they got the help they needed. We gave them a warm handoff. We were in the process of expanding access and services to the victim witness advocates by creating a 24-hour hotline. We were in the process of expanding support for victims of survivors of crime by providing child care at the Family Justice Center in conversation with community groups on how to access the Measure C money for child care. Our Consumer Justice Bureau was one of the most active teams in the state of California and ever in this office. In 1 year, they obtained a record-breaking, groundbreaking settlements and judgments of $20 million for the residents of Alameda County who were the victims of corporate crimes. We did a groundbreaking criminal prosecution of a major polluter in West Oakland, the first ever criminal grand jury indictment of a major corporation and 2 of its executives, holding them accountable for polluting the air and the water in West Oakland, as well as the Bay Area. We joined the first prosecution of a rogue landlord on behalf of tenants in the city of Alameda, partnering with the city of Alameda City Attorney's Office. We established 3 community-based commissions, bringing everyday people into the conversation about how justice is administered for the residents of Alameda County, a victims advisory commission, a mental health commission, and a reentry commission to help reduce recidivism in Alameda County so that everyday residents could have a voice about how the DA's office serves victims. Lastly, I met with many families, including the family of Jasper Wu and the survivors of Michelle Xavier and Jennifer Dewey and Michaela Garrett, who were murdered by David Mish. And I oversaw the successful prosecution and conviction of David Mish. And last but not least, I stood strong with the family of Rachel Elizabeth Imani Buckner and personally oversaw the successful prosecution of Joseph Roberts for what was probably the most horrific murder in the history of Alameda County. Joseph Roberts dismembered Imani's body. Her head, her hands, and her feet were severed, and her body parts were found along the shoreline in the city of Alameda. It was clearly the most horrific murder involving domestic violence in this county ever. I stood with her family and her friends, and we got justice for them. So there you have it. And I just wanted to correct the record.